just play Spearhead. Just kidding. But really, Spearhead is probably the best way to play AOS. I'm assuming you didn't just randomly click on this video and you actually read the title of the video or the thumbnail, whichever comes first, and you know what the context of just buy a Spearhead is. But if you didn't and you're here by random and don't actually know what's happening, this video is about what the best Age of Sigmar army to start in is. Working on that title. Personally, I think the best option is to just buy a Spearhead. Pick the army that you think is the coolest, the prettiest, or the scariest looking. Build it up, paint it, and play that as your tutorial start into Age of Sigmar. Spearhead is a genuinely fun, relatively balanced game that allows you to experience AOS in a light version or an easier version to understand, and you can get a good sense of how your army plays in general. But I take it you're not really interested in Spearhead, or you just want to find another way to collect, or you already have a Spearhead and you want to know where to go from there, or if there are any other options. Today's video is for you. But before we get into that, if you want to see more videos like this, more talking videos, more one-on-one where it's just you and me and my thoughts, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps us know what kind of videos you are interested in. Also, be sure to check out our memberships. We're really excited with the Discord thing that we're still working on, and all of the other perks that we've got. But without further ado, let's just get into this. Okay. So I've broken up these different sections into 4 specific categories. Those categories being the easiest to paint, the easiest to collect, the easiest to play, and my personal pick. And we're going to go in no particular order, but we're going to start with order. So to explain, Age of Sigmar is split up into 4 factions, or categories. These categories are based off of the god that the specific faction worships, not necessarily if they're the good guys or the bad guys, although typically those in the Order faction are more morally good. We don't talk about Daughters of Cain, but you know... they're typically the good guys in most books, or most books are written from their perspective. If you're interested in the easiest army to paint for Order, it actually depends. Sheridan says it's the Stormcast Eternals, and I say it's the Seraphon. This really depends on your level of skill. So Stormcast Eternals are really easy to just prime in your specific color, whether that being gold or black or lead belcher, and then doing some additional highlights and washes. It's pretty simple. It's one of the armies that you can do the most growth in my opinion, and do some really crazy stuff. There's some pretty cool examples. I'll probably throw them up while I'm talking, of things that you can do with the army, but it is also very simple and easy to just slap chop, basically. Even though I personally hate slap chop, you can do it with this faction very easily. The other one being Seraphon. Seraphon, in my opinion, is probably the easiest to paint if you're a new painter or a beginner painter, because they are harder to mess up, and there are so many tutorials out there that are for beginners and using contrast paints, as that seems to be what is most commonly pushed for beginner painters. I personally do plan on doing a Seraphon tutorial series that involves some contrast paints, but is mostly a true paint scheme. It is also an army that seems a lot more daunting in the way that it is mostly skin, but it is rough skin that takes to dry brushing really well. It is, like I said, you can use a lot of contrast paints with it. It really depends on your level of skill and the overall scheme you're going for. I'm currently working on Seraphon myself, and I don't know if you can see it all that well, but I'll do a close-up. You can kind of get a gist of what I've been doing. It is an army that allows you to grow pretty easily. So, boiling the answer down to Seraphon or Stormcast Eternals, it all depends on what you want to do with your army. For the easiest to collect, this answer is pretty straightforward and extremely simple. It is Stormcast Eternals. Stormcast Eternals is the easiest army to collect probably in the entire game, because you can go to eBay right now and you can find the Stormcast Eternals half of the Skaven box, of the Dominion box, and pretty easily just find people getting out of Stormcast or changing armies. They're kind of, in a lot of ways, the Space Marine faction of the Age of Sigmar game, in the fact that there are a lot of people who play the Stormcast Eternals. Not to mention their spearhead is actually really good, even though it has a named character, so you can't really buy more than one. That one box is like 700, almost 800 points, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. But that is my answer, is Stormcast Eternals is the easiest to collect. Once again, my easiest to play answer is actually Stormcast Eternals and Seraphon once again. Stormcast Eternals, if you're coming from 40k, their army rule is extremely easy to understand. It is basically Deep Strike. For those of you who don't know what Deep Strike is, it's teleporting. You can teleport with the army. That's the army rule. It's extremely easy to understand, but in the same vein, it is also kind of boring, like in a really weird way, where you think teleporting would be interesting, but in a lot of ways, it's a little boring. Maybe it's just because I've been playing a lot of 40k recently with the launch of 11th edition, but having the army rule being Deep Strike is just like, oh, okay, it could be more interesting. As for the Seraphon, their army rule is basically just a bunch of passives that you can put on to your units. You get a choice of 4 different options. They're very easy to understand. They're very good general passives that you put onto the army. This may change when they get their battle tome, but as of right now, they don't have their battle tome for 4th edition, which is kind of crazy to think because 4th edition is ending in like less than a year. It's very easy to understand. It's just kind of passive buffs that you put onto the army. And that's why those two armies are the easiest to play, in my opinion. If you don't agree with me or you think I've overlooked something, let me know in the comments, because I have not played every faction in Age of Sigmar, and I've not played a full game of Age of Sigmar in a little while. So if I'm missing something, let me know. I just know that like Lumineth is kind of insane I'm trying to look at the perspective of like a new beginner player who's never touched Age of Sigmar, who has never touched 40k. That point of view, what is the easiest to pick? Now, for my personal pick for this faction, I'm choosing the Cities of Sigmar. Their range is beautiful. The models are gorgeous. They're not necessarily the easiest to paint. Look at my tutorials that I've got uploaded, link below or popping up or wherever it ends up being. But no matter how difficult it is to paint them, they are very beautiful once they are fully painted. I really like the Cities of Sigmar range. It is completely gorgeous. Also, with their new battle tome, their army rule is fantastic. I do like the changes that they did do when they got their battle tome. The rule is a little complicated, so I don't know if it's great for a new beginner, but it's my personal pick. It's my opinion. My favorite army for the Order faction is Cities of Sigmar. All right, easiest to paint is a very easy answer. None of them. Chaos is extremely difficult to paint. You're going to have to deal with chaos trim, you're going to have to deal with lithe, very smooth skin, or you're going to have to deal with really awkward or really old minis. That's kind of a sucky part about playing Chaos. However, Chaos does make up for it in the fact that it is really fun to play. It's fun to be the bad guy. I mean, that's what draws a lot of people into playing 40k. If I was to give you the correct answer in the easiest paint, it would probably be the Maggotkin of Nurgle. However, as an avid hater of the Plague God and his armies in both 40k and Age of Sigmar, I cannot in good conscience recommend people to play that army. Fight me. Please don't, actually. I'm very sensitive. But with that being the case, I am going to recommend the Hellsmiths of Hashut. Their range is very small, so you don't have too many minis to get lost in. Most of their minis are metallic or have metallic accents. There's not as much trim as a lot of the other factions have, and to be honest, they're really cool looking, and you could probably sink your teeth into painting them pretty. I'm gonna stick with that. As for the easiest to play, it's likely the Skaven. Most other factions' army rules are very complicated or are very combo heavy and require a lot of thinking and a lot of maneuverability and a lot of understanding of the fundamentals of Age of Sigmar's core rules in order to play the factions properly, or at least in the ways that Age of Sigmar seems to present them to be played. Skaven's army rule is pretty easy to understand. It's a diggy hole, tunnel system, if you will. They have a few other additional buffs that the army gets in general, but the core concept is you've got rat tunnels. It's kind of similar to the Stormcast teleporting mechanic, but a little bit more flavorful in the fact that it's rats, and rats are cooler than metal men, but that's just my personal opinion. One of the greatest parts about Skaven is it's an extremely well-rounded army, as they're kind of chaos undivided. Not really, but kind of. You're playing rats. It's pretty simple. It's straightforward. As for the easiest to collect, my answer is also Skaven. Just like the Stormcasts in the Skaven Tide box, the Skaven portion of that box is very easy to get your hands on. You can find multiple different combo boxes. They are very easy to collect. You can get, they just released a whole new Cities of Sigmar versus Skaven box that has the Eshin part of the army. That alone, I think it's like 600 points for that part of the box. And you get like the entire Eshin portion of the army. So if that's something that you're wanting, boom, there you go. Really easy to collect Skaven. As for my pick, my personal pick for Chaos, I gotta go with STD, Slaves to Darkness. They are my favorite faction in Age of Sigmar's Chaos faction. I recently have read the God Eater's Son book. Cannot recommend it enough. It is very good, even though it's more heavily implied that he's kind of a Blades of Corn character. It's a Slaves to Darkness adjacent. Most of the range is absolutely phenomenal. There's only a couple of them that are a little old and a little wrinkly and a little dinkly. The vast majority of the faction is very cool looking. If you want to play the Dark Knights, the quintessential bad guys. In fact, the number one bad guy in the Everchosen. That's the faction to play. Their rule is also really cool in the fact that it is literally just the gods choose to bless you with certain blessings, and it's very cool. Their Spearhead, not the Dark Oath one, because I haven't actually played that one, but the other one is really cool. That's why it's my personal pick. It's really fun to play. It's really fun to paint. I'm actually also in the middle of painting some STDs, if you will. But let's move on to the next faction. All right, Death. Death is probably the easiest faction to paint in general. They're mostly dead things, so it's pretty easy to paint them in the fact that dead things aren't necessarily pretty. The hardest faction to paint Death would probably be the Soulblight Gravelords. As for the easiest, it's probably Nighthaunt. I've heard, I don't have a Nighthaunt army, so I don't know exactly how easy it is to paint them, but just from what I've heard and just from what I've seen in tutorials and stuff online, you slap some contrast paint on one ghost and you've painted all of the army. It's really simple. They're not very big models. They're kind of the same model, just copy and pasted. So if you didn't do that, you'd probably go insane just from the sheer amount of models that you've got to put on the board. They're literally, actually, legitimately bedsheet ghosts. It's really hard to mess them up. I'm not saying it's impossible, and I'm not saying it isn't something that can happen, but they're probably one of the easiest, if not the easiest faction to paint in Age of Sigmar. As for the easiest to play in the Death faction, I would also say it is Nighthaunt. I don't, like I said, have a Nighthaunt army, so it could be completely different, but from what I understand, and from what I have seen, their core main rule is screw you, I ignore this specific mechanic in the game, which is Rend, which is, for those of you who are 40k brained, AP. It is the thing that you subtract from your saving throw. They just don't do that. That's kind of like their whole shtick. They're bedsheet ghosts. Why would your physical attacks do anything to them? They also have a bit of a teleportation mechanic in the sense that they have a like ruin structure that they can teleport to. That's not really their core mechanic. Them and Soulblight Gravelords both have that teleporting mechanic because they both share the same terrain feature. As for the easiest to collect, I would say it is either Soulblight Gravelords or Oziarch Bone Reapers. They both have some pretty cool combo boxes that you can still find on like Amazon. Their spearheads are really good. The Soulblight Gravelord spearhead is literally most expensive part of the army, being the bone part, the part that takes the longest to collect because it is the most expensive part, and it is all in one spearhead, and it's like $145, and you've got a core part of your army taken care of in one fell swoop. I would
They're in the woods.
I would actually recommend probably buying 2 of those, if not 3, because the guys that you get in that box is actually legitimately really good. And as for the Oziarch Bone Reapers, there's quite a few really big combo boxes that you can still get. I'm personally not a huge fan of that faction, so I don't know too much about them. I just know that it is really easy to collect a 2,000 point army of Oziarch Bone Reapers pretty easily. That is one of the benefits of playing Age of Sigmar over 40k, is it is way easier to reach that 2,000 point threshold because everything is actually pointed as if it were cost an arm and a leg to field. So that's my personal opinion when it comes to the collection of the Death faction. I'm not sure if there is an other option. If there is, let me know. I could be wrong, but as far as I can tell, those are the 2 easiest factions to collect for Age of Sigmar's Death faction. As for my personal pick, it is Soulblight Gravelords. Soulblight Gravelords is my Death army. I really like the army. I really like the minis in the army. It's very beautiful range. The refresh of the skeleton horde is fantastic. I did do a tutorial series on that, so I'm a little biased, but it is really pretty once you've got them all fielded and all painted. It's just gorgeous. It's very fun, and you can do a lot of fun stuff with that army. It is a little swarmy if you build more towards that. And unfortunately, their army rule does focus very heavily on the skeleton half. So if you're somebody who's like, I want the vampires, it's not really focused on the vampires. They do get some bonuses, but it is mostly focused on the undead half of the army, which is a little unfortunate. I wish there was a little bit more to being a vampire heavy army, because I do love the Blood Knights. Those guys are really cool. But that is the Death faction. Moving on to the final faction. Onto Destruction. The easiest to paint is Gloomspite gets. They're very old minis. Aside from the Wolfpack part of the army, if you're doing the Moon Clan section, it is extremely... They are little tiny guys wearing black cloaks and tiny little faces. And it's pretty simple and pretty easy to paint. The Troggoths take the contrast paints extremely well, and if you're not somebody who likes contrast paints or slap chop paint style, Sheridan did do a Troggoth tutorial. She actually did a whole tutorial on the Moon Clan spearhead, so check that out. Doing a lot of self-promotion this video, I just noticed. We've done a lot of tutorials, I guess. They're probably the easiest to paint, mainly because their models are extremely simple. You will be painting a lot, so it's one of those factions that they're easy to paint, but there's 40 of them that you've got to paint. So you can get a little lost in the sauce if you're not careful. As for easiest to play, I am going to do the new Ogre Maw tribes. I looked at their army rule and stuff via the Warhammer community, and I gotta say, it's really cool. I absolutely love their army rule. It's the first Destruction army that I've ever had like legitimate interest in collecting. They're very cool in the sense that like the army rules make sense. One of them is literally just eating people. That's the army rule. You just eat people. Is so simple and so easy to understand, and is probably the easiest to understand in all of the factions, aside from maybe the Sons of Bahamut. As far as easiest to understand right away, I would say Ogre Maw tribes is probably the pick. As for easiest to collect, it's Oryx, and it's not close. It's not even a little bit close. They've got 2 different spearheads. They were in the other half of the Dominion box. They have several large combo boxes. They are extremely easy to get a hold of and extremely easy to collect. The only downfall is that it's technically 2 armies in a trench coat, and that can sometimes be a pitfall for some people. Sheridan collects the sneaky get half of the army, and then our buddy collects the other half of the army. So when there are combo boxes, it's easy to differentiate and like set up the models to go to each individual person. It is unfortunately 2 armies in a trench coat, and therefore it can sometimes be a little bit harder to figure out which way you want to play, but it is, in my personal opinion, the easiest to collect. You could argue the Sons of Bahamut, however, they are very expensive to collect. They may only need like 4 or 5 models to get onto the board and play a 2,000 point game, but you're spending $700 to $800 to do that because they are not cheap. They are very expensive. I have got a guy up there that I'm using in my Age of Sigmar army as a regiment of renown. I was able to get a discount on that box, and it was still a lot of money. So it is not an army that if you do not have piles of grass, what the f does that mean? You ever just say something so unbelievably stupid that it just like derails your entire train of thought? I don't even know what I was talking about. Money. I meant money. If you weren't made of money. I think I got confused with green. The color green bamboozled me. Alright, I'm moving on to the next point. As for my personal pick, I've got to go for the Ogre Maw tribes. I fell in love with the minis as soon as they showed up on that preview. It was game over for me. I just like them. They're really cool. They're very awesome. I'm not a big fan of the butcher half of the army, but I figure with a little bit of kit bashing, a little bit of sculpting, I could probably get them to looking a little bit less gross. That's my personal pick. I like their army rule. I'm not a huge fan of destruction in general. I wasn't a huge fan of the ogres until they got their refresh and I saw their new rule. I'm a big fan of that. With that all being said, I guess we could boil this video down to just play Spearhead. Spearhead is the easiest way to get into an army. It's the easiest way to collect an army initially. It gives you a good taste of what the army is like and gives you a general vibe check as to whether or not you would want to continue to collect that army, which is one of the crucial parts of this game, is you want to make sure you're having fun. Fun is a key component to collecting an army from Spearhead to 2,000 points. But if you enjoyed today's video and you want to see more videos of me ranting for God knows how long, let me know in the comments below what topic you would like us to talk about or discuss, whether you want more Age of Sigmar content, more 40k content, if you want more tutorials, more talking, more how-to. We are really compatible with you guys. You just got to let us know what you want. And with that, be sure to leave a like and subscribe and become a member and support us in any way that you possibly can. The easiest way to support us is through the like, subscribe, and share mechanic. It actually legitimately does help. I was a skeptical person as to whether or not it would actually help, and it does. Come to find out, it actually does help. Without further ado, I think I am going to end today's video, and I'll catch you guys in the next realm. See ya.